Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Healing for Hot Messes podcast, the place where magic, mindset, and mystery collide. I am super excited to have Athena Laz here with me today. So, Athena is the best-selling author of Women Who Dance in the Dark, The Alchemy of Your Dreams, The Sisterhood of Seers Oracle Deck, and The Deliberate Dreamer's Journal. Her books have been translated into more than 13 languages worldwide. She is an intuitive psychologist and lucid dream teacher who helps thousands of people worldwide connect to spirit and psyche through the medium of dreams, mysticism, intuitive development, as well as archetypal and symbolic work. And you can find more of her work at AthenaLaz.com. But Athena, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Mandy. I'm so excited to speak to you. And hearing the bio, I realized it has got to get much shorter.
Oh, I love it. It's so funny because, I'm like reading your bio and I'm like, oh, I fuck with this. So heavy. It's so cool. Everything about what you do is so cool. And for anybody listening, I have The Deliberate Dreamer's Journal by Athena here, and it is so cool. You guys know I'm obsessed with dreams and the dream world, and it's really good. So you might want to go check that out. So I will put links in the description here, guys, for anybody who is listening or watching so that you can check out her books. But Athena, you have a new book coming out, and I'm literally so obsessed with the topic because I love archetypes. I love all of this like intuitive, mystic stuff here. So, would you mind telling us a little bit about women who dance in the dark?
Absolutely. Right. So I'm going to kind of backtrack and set the picture for this book, right? So this book, Women Who Dance in the Dark, it's all about the medial archetype, which is this archetype which helps us to bridge realms. So the unseen and the seen, the dreaming world and the waking world. And then there's a whole lot of other stuff that this archetype can help us do, like mediate tension that we experience internally, but also outside in the collective, right? But before we dive into it, what I think is so amazing about this archetype and kind of something that happened to me in the process of writing this, when I wrote my first book, which was in 2021, which is on dreams, and I was sitting on the bed and I had this intuitive, um, I guess like a clairaudient experience where I heard the word medial. And I was like, that's kind of strange. I'm not sure what that's about. And I Googled it and I Googled the word medial. And I had just written a paragraph in the book that literally was about bridging the unseen and the seen, the dreaming world and the waking world. And I found this beautiful little paper by this woman, Toni Wolff, who was Carl Jung's lover, patient, mirror to and guide to his deep unconscious journeying that he did. And she wrote this very small paper on the structural forms of the feminine psyche, and she mapped out the medial archetype. And so I was like, how do we not know about this? This is exactly what I was writing about. And then fast forward, that's where we are now with the new work, the new book.
That is so amazing. Isn't it incredible how the creative channel can just be like such an incredible way to get new information and to bring like old information to light. I'm always so amazed at the creative channel and how if you just take the time and space to listen to it and then honor what it tells you, so many
Right.
of us gaslight ourselves into thinking like, oh, that was just nothing, but when you actually give it space, there can be so many beautiful things that come from that.
That's it, right? And I feel like so much of what I think you do so beautifully in the world, and part of what my work is also aimed at, is healing the split that so many of us feel. between going, okay, what you're receiving actually isn't bullshit. It's not. It's actually coming from something very valuable. And whatever we name it, to me, it doesn't really matter, right? But it has weight to it and it has this immense power to help us, And so to me, it's just part of this healing work that I think we're doing collectively, where we're really trying, so many people are trying to just say, like, well, I'm having these amazing experiences. I'm interested in like expanded states of consciousness. I listen to my intuition. And at the same time, you of the world, so not kind of like weighing up one over the other. I think that's kind of the healing work that maybe needs to happen.
Absolutely, especially in the world that we live in now, certainly in our culture, where it's kind of like seen as mysticism or anything like that is this like weird, fluffy, othered thing. Whereas when you look at like things going on in the world right now, I feel like we could use a little more imagination. I feel like we could use a
Yeah.
little more intuition and connection to something bigger than, our very kind of small human mundane existence that can feel very powerless, right?
Right, right. And I think that part of what I love about this archetype, the medial archetype, right, is that I feel archetypes have like an energy of their own. They arise in the collective, I think with their own will.
Yeah.
And people who are sensitive to that will pick that up. And this archetype is very much exactly about what you just said,
Yeah.
right? It's very much about bridging. Okay, well, we see so much stuff is happening in the collective. We know that so many people have lost their link to imagination, to intuition, to everything that's mystical, everything that's amazing, everything that actually helps us, in my opinion, co-create reality.
Yeah.
And so when we're so blindsided, that's when we see so much chaos, right? So this archetype, I really feel like is coming up now because the collective is kind of wobbling and it's very much a type of archetypal energy in the way that I experience it as one that can bring about equanimity, right? So not even harmony, because like with harmony, we're in the space of disharmony, So the way I see it, it's literally like a bridge. It's almost that like equanimity, that kind of cool space of going, okay, these two things can exist at the same time, but we're bridging something new and allowing that to be like an organic process. And I think what trips all of us up, myself so is so included in this statement, is that when we can't see where we're going, when we're really in that unknown, we have so many fabulous like statements about it, but really it's learning how to see in the dark and it's learning how to trust that unknown. And so that to me is kind of like the beginning part of the medial archetype.
Wow. When you said seeing, like learning to see in the dark, I actually got chills because that's such a powerful thing, I think, right now for all of us in humanity, is that ability to try and see things for what they are, but be able to see something beyond it and to be able to trust that those things can be a possibility for us. Um,
Absolutely.
so can you tell me a little bit more about this medial archetype? It sounds so interesting and again, very needed right now.
Sure. So, in the original paper by Toni Wolff, right, she wrote this beautiful sort of like three-line descriptor of the medial woman specifically, and she said this was a person who could mediate the unconscious and conscious, but that they were prone to just really pick up on the collective unconscious, right? So people who naturally have dreams, for example, of say like a tsunami before it happens,
Mhm.
that would be a very good example of someone who embodies the medial archetype, right? In
Mhm.
my own work, so I marry like spirit and psyche together. So what I have done with the medial archetype, I feel in my work is taken it one step further, where it's not just in the realm of like the unconscious collective, but also on our personal capacity, right? So, and what that means is heightened intuition, greater discernment, seership. Yeah, literally willingly knowing and understanding and accepting that being intuitive, being psychic, being mediumistic, being a channel, all these things are actually totally normal. They're a natural function of who we are, and accepting that as really valuable. And in the kind of the way that I see this archetype coming up is that it gives us great language to use this term like medial, where we don't yet have like stigma around it, but it really speaks to like our multi-dimensional part of us, the part of us that can who does travel when we're dreaming, right? Who can go out of body, who can, when we're connecting with people who have crossed over, that's the medial archetype. And then it's also very grounded in the psychology of it that, oh, okay, say for example, you have a belief that you're holding, but an emotion that is very conflicting in that way. Well, then the medial archetype as this energy of its own can give you a dream or a symbol that can help you mediate that. And so it's naturally transformative. So it works in three realms, right? It works with us and the unseen, like the spirit world, whatever language we want to use, spirit, the deceased, whoever, right? That one channel. Then it works in our personal inner worlds, how we mediate our dreams, how we can meet people in that space, how this archetype can speak to us in that space for transformation, and then also how we can use that energy with other people. So for example, a really good just like a basic psychic example of it is most people have this experience, like if you're walking down the street and then all of a sudden you turn because someone was staring at you. And we all naturally do this. And that really is intuitive perception. So part of embodying the medial is understanding that that's part of this faculty.
That's so, yeah, that is so amazing. And it's funny because being able to actually listen to your intuition, being able to actually pay attention to what it's telling you, that sort of thing. It can literally be a survival skill. Like it's so crazy, the amount of times that I think humanity, most of us are captivated by those stories of like, I didn't go to work the day that something crazy happened, or
Right.
I didn't listen to my gut and I got myself in this situation I shouldn't have listened to. And even on a sort of less dramatic level, but still incredibly, I think, and maybe even more profound for the collective level,
Right.
all of us who make decisions or gaslight our own intuition in everyday life when it comes to the partners we meet or the jobs we take or the friendships we allow in our lives, or like not listening to our own compass when it comes to how we parent, or like there's so many millions of ways that it is a survival skill that we should be listening to in the mundane, like woven into the very fabric of it. So
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, I'm nodding because yes, I absolutely so totally resonate with everything that you're saying. And I think that part of what happens is that we're taught to not listen to that, and we really have to throw those layers off. We have to just throw those beliefs out, or whatever, however we want to sort of say that. In actually in the book Woman Who Danced in the Dark, I share a story about a man named 𝐬𝐿𝐫𝐿, and he wrote a book called The Gift of Fear, which I'm not sure you know, right? But in this book, he literally wrote this book particularly for women because he had worked as an agent. I think it was like for the FBI or one of the agencies, right? And he worked in, it's terrible, but like in the violent crimes
Yeah.
or something department like that. And every survivor of a violent crime told him that they knew
Hmm.
both instinctively and intuitively that something was wrong before what ended up happening happened.
Yeah.
And he wrote his book to really try and like empower people not to dismiss that voice. And that is just like you're saying, that's sort of like the extreme level, a very sort of traumatic level of what not paying attention to our intuition can do. Also, not to say or blame anyone who's ever maybe been in an experience like that, because you could still have intuitive and instinctual instincts and things can pan out, right?
Yeah.
But what I love about his work and what I love about the medial archetype is that it helps us weave in three ways of seeing, right? So we're weave in and balance these ways of seeing. And the first one is through our ego sight, our everyday, the way we move through the world, not in a like narcissistic way, just like we need to be able to look at each other on the podcast, make the meeting. We need our minds, we need to be able to perceive the functional parts of reality, right? And then with the instinctual parts, that when the body kicks in and goes, okay, this is something's happening, pay attention. The same like someone staring at you from a distance. To me, that embodies the wild archetype, like what people would call wild woman. And then the medial part for me is really the precognitive parts. It's the part of us that can track it into different timelines, that can help us mediate multiple things at the same time, and then also just in the moment recognize, oh well, I have an intuitive hit about this, or I get the sense that actually I'm not alone in the room that I'm sitting in, that maybe there's someone who is deceased with me. And what I love about this is that it can go as far or as open as people want to explore, but it's a natural capacity that we can all do. And so I think it kind of takes out the fear, or at least for me, I think part of why I wrote the book is to help people remove the fear.
Yeah.
From experiencing that. You know, if people just say this is totally normal, this is actually very normal, I think a lot more people would have like, I know for me in my own life, I would have had a much easier run of things if that had been the messaging, you know. I think online now with technology, it's totally maybe different. Like, I was born in the 80s, so I'm giving away part of my age here, but I think now that's the one thing I would say that is so amazing about technology, that you can find your space, you know. So if you're having an experience that maybe isn't the norm, you can definitely find people much easier, you know.
For sure. Yeah. I was born in 83, so I get everything that you're saying. And it's so funny because our exposure to, I mean, your exposure to that sort of thing back in those days really depended on your surroundings and who you had in your life if you were a child or anything like that.
Totally.
Where, you know, if you don't have an open family or people who are open in your circle, it's almost, I mean, I have a ton of I think my own fair share of the witch wound when it comes to seeing and hearing
Right.
things that aren't there and getting mental health diagnoses that maybe didn't fit necessarily the full way, and like having to gaslight yourself from an early age. Something that's interesting about your work is you were talking about how you marry sort of the spirit and the psyche, which is like something that I absolutely love, is that intersection of spirituality and psychology. And so I wanted to ask a little bit about like what led you to this line of work, because you have such an interesting combination of credentials, which is almost a bridge in and of itself, right? This like
Right.
mundane psychology world, which I mean, psychology really is anything but mundane, but it is
But
pretty,
I get what you mean. It's
yeah,
traditional,
it's
right?
very traditional science kind of thing. But then there's your role as an intuitive, right? And it sounds like this was something that was generational for you. So I'm
Yeah.
so curious about your own journey to this work.
Well, thanks for asking, right? So I very much feel like I landed up here because of exactly who I am. So when I was younger, I would say my intuitive abilities were very turned on.
Hmm.
So like I would see people in the room that weren't there would receive information, like, and I would tell my parents. And I was lucky that my parents weren't actually freaked out about it at all, but it was very much something that stayed in the home, something that, like, okay, it's okay to kind of talk about this at home, but when the minute you're outside, like, it's a no-no, you know.
Mhm.
And then I had lots of lucid dream experiences and out of body experiences as a child. And I had no language for that. I didn't know what they were. I had some very good experiences and some very terrifying experiences in the liminal passages of sleep. And so that kind of tracked. I spent a lot of time in nature as a child as well. And I think that really helped me intuitively. Like, I think that's part of why it was so intuitive at that point in time. And
Mhm.
then, as life is, I had very sort of just like easygoing friends, but in a very structured kind of way. And none of this interested any of my friends. I didn't have a lot of people to talk to about it. And so I kind of just tucked it away. It was very much like an interior world thing, something that I never truly dismissed, but I never felt comfortable sharing it with other people.
Mhm.
And then I hit, like, I was about 20, and I was like, I need to really figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And I worked at this metaphysical shop whilst I was in between things. And one of the girls who worked with me, she gifted me a copy of Louise Hay's book, You
Mhm.
Can Heal Your Life. And it literally was like someone turned on a light for me when I read the book.
Wow.
I was like, oh, I can have meta awareness. This is part of what I'm experiencing. And
Mhm.
so that kind of motivated me to become a psychologist. But at the same time, I trained shamanically. I trained with a person who was actually a Kabbalist and a shaman, and I
Mhm.
did my psych degree. And in true form, I think this is part of why I personally needed to write a book on the medial archetype. I did not tell either. I did not tell my teacher, my shamanic teacher, or my psychology friends about one another. It was so much easier to compartmentalize it. And when I reflect on it, and I've had some great conversations with a few Jungian analysts, I can fully take ownership of the fact that I walked through the world in that way. And
Mhm.
if I had maybe been more authentic, like how I am now, where that isn't shocking to be like, oh, yes, I am psychic and I am also a psychologist. I lucid dream. I teach people how to go out of body. To me, it's all the same thing, actually. But I think if I hadn't had so much fear about judgment and feeling ashamed for it, I think it would have been much easier. And then I was sitting. I was in private practice at the time, and I was sitting in my garden, and I just knew that I couldn't like carry on in the way that I was,
Mhm.
because I had a lot of people who were coming to see me in a very like traditional psychology practice, but I was seeing like someone standing behind them, or I would hear like nicknames for them, and sometimes that would come up naturally in the therapy, but it wasn't a space where I felt like I could say, oh, I'm hearing the name Peanut. Does that mean anything to you? You know, and I really don't feel like, with everything that I learned in the thing, I think I would not have felt ethical doing that, right? Which in hindsight, after speaking to so many other people in different diverse practices, actually, I'm not sure if I just was a bit too rigid about it. But it kind of really motivated me to go, okay, what is it if I could just stand in the world and just be me, what would that kind of look like? And it looks like who I am now talking to you. So I went online, built my little business, decided to speak about the things that actually interest me. And at the same time, there's so much of psychology that I have found helpful, that I've seen literally hundreds, thousands actually of people even heal from, right? And so I really feel, because of my own journey, and also because of what I think the world is asking us for, is that we have to kind of bring the two together.
Mhm.
Or I really had to bring the two together, you know? So I feel like when I wrote this book about the medial archetype, it made so much sense to me, because the bridge makers, the people who have been outliers, I would say predominantly, I hope will feel seen and heard through this book, because you're actually building worlds for people, and you're pathing the way forward. And most people, if they're on the edges of either pathway, they don't understand. And actually, there is a lot of judgment that comes from it. There can be a lot of pain, right? And a lot of fear thrown at you. Even still now, I'll sometimes get messages from very upset people
Yeah.
who will say to me, I can't believe like you have an oracle deck. How can you do this? Blah, 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 blah. And, I actually can do it. Is actually absolutely normal. The fact that we've forgotten that symbols are alive. Are you kidding me? That is like the basic function of the psyche. It gives us symbols. They are so alive. They can help us move. We can use them as like entry points into the most amazing things on a very pragmatic level, and then also on a very multi-dimensional level. So I've had to learn to become very kind of vocal about it.
Yeah.
And also I think now something that's changed, and I will say I think it's the gift of turning 40, is that before I was coming from the perspective of, oh, I wonder if that person will agree with what I think. So, will they approve of the fact that yes, you can be this and that or whatever? And now I don't have the belief system anymore. And since I don't have that, more often than not, it doesn't come into my frame of reference so much anymore. I'm very lucky to be surrounded now by amazing people. Like, I get to speak to you. We've connected through our work, beautifully in the world, right? Just showing up and being who we are. And the most amazing people have popped up. And I think that's exactly what happens when we integrate, when we heal,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true because I think that this idea that these worlds have to be separate and that it's like it has to be this way or that way, I think that line of thinking, even in a way more general sense, is really what's like driving our species into the ground, is that we cannot seem to hold that multiple things are true at the same time. And until we build capacity individually and collectively for us to recognize that that's just how shit works and it doesn't need to make sense to you, I feel like we're just going to continue to be going down this path that is not very good for us. And the more people that can be authentic with that, like what you're talking about, your experience there, it is truly amazing how once you energetically back yourself and your subjective reality and the world that you live in, your experiences, honoring your channels, all of that thing, it is truly amazing the kind of things that do get drawn into your life because it's a frequency thing, right? So other people are
Absolutely.
going to, instead of having to fight to validate who you are, you end up in a world where you get to just be who you are, and there's other people who are being who they are, and you guys come
Right.
together.
And it's so beautiful, like you're saying, because you're in an elevated frequency and you're not in defense mode.
Yeah.
And I think so much currently in the world, like you were saying, is vying for our attention to get us actually into defense mode, to have us have an opinion about something, for us to pick a side, for us to like over identify with all these things. And
Yeah.
actually, none of that really feels good, because we're not coming from a place of integration. We're actually splitting when we do that. And so and this happens in, I have found that, just like watching social media, that this can happen in any community, right? Like
Yeah.
the spiritual communities are full of that. Oh my
Oh,
gosh, wow,
yeah.
they can be, right? The psychological community is the same, political, whatever it is. And
Mhm.
I think what's so empowering, and something that I think is so amazing about specifically working with the medial archetype, is that that kind of energy can mirror it for us and show us how to do that if we're unsure. So we don't have to get stuck in the how. It's a much it's like a much easier way of moving through the world because we mediate the energy. And what happens by mediating the energy, you create another. And so you're actually not stuck in the polarity of it, you know. And I think enough people will feel that and experience that, and then it changes the collective, you know.
Mm-hmm. Um, so I have a question about this medial archetype. So your book is titled Women Who Dance in the Dark. Is this like this archetype sounds fairly universal. So is this an archetype that, men also can work with because, I know there's plenty of male mediums and things like that, or is there more of a masculine version of that? Because I know that sometimes with Jung, there's the feminine and the masculine sides. And so I'm just curious about that.
So, Tony Wolff, the analyst who wrote the paper, right? She mapped it out as only a feminine structure, something that was unique to women. When
Hmm.
I wrote the book, my book, I didn't feel that to be true at all. So I say I wrote in the feminine because the medial nature appeared to me in that way at
Hmm.
first. But actually, it's for us all. It's a way of relating. It's the resonance of it. And like you were saying, it's actually the frequency.
Hmm.
So to me, that isn't gendered, right? But what I think is very helpful, and I share stories and myths and dreams in the book,
Hmm.
right? Where we'll see the medial as a guardian.
Hmm.
We can. I had a very big dream about a male medial figure whilst I was writing the mythic portion of the book, which I loved. And then later, I recognized an image and realized that it was a man called Papa Legba, who's a
Oh.
Haitian
Hmm.
um, deity, right? And I did not know that in the dream, but when I woke up, I could remember his face, and he is literally a guardian of the crossroads, of thresholds. So these archetypes, they're so old and they have so many faces. And as culture changes, as people change, the image may change, but the essence of it stays the same. So I've written woman stories, male stories, non-gendered, and then guardian, where it's just like, oh, it can be angelic. So for example, people sometimes, in my opinion, experience the medial archetype. They can as like male men in their dreams, or receiving a message like a
Hmm.
letter.
Hmm.
That is the medial archetype, but it's kind of more symbolic in its root, right? As opposed to a visual person. So to answer your question, in my opinion, yes, everyone can adapt and use this archetype positively. I'm not sure if everyone would agree with me on that,
Hmm.
but that's my position on it.
Is it even a day that ends in Y if people aren't fucking agreeing, though?
Exactly.
Um, I love that though, because this sounds like such a powerful archetype right now for all of us, but also I love how you mentioned that it can be used in the mundane as well, right? Because that's the thing. I feel like you're talking about the three realms it works in, and I always felt like I was born with like not enough of like the actual mundane realm. I'm like, Mandy, you need to know what day of the week it is sometimes. Like, get your shit together. I feel like the world, the land of dreams, all of that is where I've always felt more comfortable. Um, and so it's
God.
so funny because there these things like whether it be dreams, intuition, all of these things, they really are useful to us in multiple spheres. And I think that part of something that can be really shocking for people that say are coming, deconstructing, or people who are just coming into spirituality, is just having an awakening, is really understanding just how much relevance this stuff does have to
Yeah.
the mundane realm, right? So to
Yeah.
your mental health, to how you relate to the people in your life, to the way you move through the world just in the day to day. And I think that the more people that see that, that can be jarring, I think, for people, because it's like, oh, not only is this stuff valid and useful, but like, oh my God, it's so valid and useful. Like, how did I not, how was I not tapped
Use
into
it.
this before?
Yeah, fully, right. And I think something that I really love you saying is that part of having this ability to perceive so beautifully, right? When you're hyper connected to dreaming, where your what I call medial vision is just so on point, then the task is exactly like you're saying, having to be extra grounded, having to really know, uh, like, know how you feel in your body. And part of the structure of this archetype, and something that I write about and Tony Wolff has written about, is that she said, because people who tend towards this archetype, because it's so easy for them to pick up information, right, from whatever collectively, from dreaming psychically, their boundaries are often so frazzled, or they have very porous boundaries. And so part of the work of this, like the shadow work of this archetype, is recognizing, okay, you're not just in that realm. We're actually here, and we need to be here. We chose to be here, right? And so using the information that you receive in a good way, so not in a way that obliterates you,
Mhm.
and then also just doing very practical mental health and like physical health to me as well, so that you can feel very grounded in your body. And I think part of what many people experience, and I think especially if they're very intuitive, is that needing to learn how to open and close your own energy.
Yes.
Because it sounds so simple, but we are actually not really taught how to do that. Most of us are not. And
Mhm.
if you're innately medial, if you're innately tapped into dreams, to perceiving, to seeing in ways that other people have shut off completely, it really, really is important. So it's super helpful that you brought that up. One of the most basic things that I find I have to do is that when I feel like I'm like too out there, I will bring myself back into the room and name things around me,
Mhm.
like table, wall, chair. And that also helps with lucidity. So it is a bonus,
Yeah.
but really pragmatic stuff.
Yeah. Wow. So I'm like very excited to get my hands on that book.
Oh, yeah. I hope your copy has been sent, so I can't wait for it to come to you.
I can't wait either because I'm super excited to read it. I really love working with archetypes. Obviously, as somebody who's like, I tend to be on like more the psychology side of mysticism and things like that because to me, I mean, it doesn't it I doesn't all feel the same, really. Like so many spiritual modalities, so many approaches, so many psychology things, so many like different cross-cultural things. It feels like it's this really beautiful web and tapestry. It's not an either or thing.
Right. I mean, I totally agree with you on what you're saying about that. And I think we find our pathways, right? And also what I think we naturally are gifted at and what we also need to learn.
Mm.
So, for example, something that was super, super helpful to me when I was training, someone I was taught how to do CBT, which is like cognitive behavioral therapy, right? And I would not say that that's the be all and end all for anyone, who's experiencing whatever, right? But having to learn just the functioning of, okay, this is like a really pragmatic thing that you can use and do. And then, oh, I can step into the realm of archetypes, like you're saying,
Mhm.
like we can be in this interesting space. And archetypes in themselves are interesting.
Mhm.
We have great like definitions for them. Oh, okay, they exist before us. They these structural truths.
Mhm.
Yeah, but what does that really mean? So like if you really distill it, like what do you come down to for yourself? Like what is it that you believe in, right? And so for me, it's kind of like this beautiful, like you're saying, exactly, it's this beautiful web. And then depending on where you need to go and what you need, the web kind of opens up.
Mhm.
So if you're having, to me, severe anxiety, for example, well, then CBT can be amazing. It can be this amazing thing that you can do for like 12 sessions, 12 hours of your life, get stuff maybe a bit more under control, and then dive into being open. Um, it all goes kind of together.
Yes, absolutely. My first book was titled Witchcraft Therapy, and you wouldn't
I
believe how
remember.
many people just got mad at me without even reading it. Because
Because of
they
the
were
title,
thinking I was somehow saying that it's like a replacement for therapy, and I was like, "Did you read like
please.
the disclaimer in the very beginning? You fucking ninny." But anyway, it's so funny how it's like these things can be synthesized, and
Yes.
you can take an approach that is, scientific and holistic. You can take an approach where you have things that complement one another. And I think that when it comes to healing, it's like, well, we are all stuck in our minds, in our bodies, in our lifetimes. Like, why
Yeah.
would you not try and make that the best? It's a felt experience what we're doing
Yeah.
here, right? It is a limited
Exactly.
time experiential thing. So why would
Very.
you not want that to be optimized to the best that you can, even if it means that you're mixing some shit up? Like,
Exactly. Since when did it become so shitty to mix things up?
yeah.
You know, like, isn't that so amazing? Like, I love the idea of, I love, not even the idea, I love to go out to get like herbs to make things, to move in that way that feels so good. And then I love to read other things about, I don't know, the world's
Yeah.
therapy, science. I don't know when it became such a bad thing
Yeah.
to merge things, and I think that's part of this. Like, I think also part of what I will say here kind of is like not a cautionary thing, but I do think there's a level of, it kind of reminds me of like the temperance image, like the archetypal card where they're like blending the
Yeah.
two, like water in two cups, because that moderation is can be super, super helpful, right?
Yes.
So I feel like anytime I find myself going, oh, okay, I think I found the way or the path or whatever it is, that
Mhm.
I kind of have learned to come back and be okay. What is this balanced way of looking at it and moving through it,
Mhm.
and including it, in ways that feel good, like you're saying, because we're literally having this experience and it's felt.
Yes.
um, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it is a very part of our primal nature, just our species as mammals, as spiritual beings,
right.
to interface with the world in that way. And I think that we've had a really long run of this, like holding them separate. And I feel like we can see, I don't know, I wouldn't say it really got us like anywhere too good when it comes to how we relate to ourselves and our own mental health. And ultimately, whether it's spirituality, science, whatever, it seems like it's this way we try and make sense of the world around us. And so I think that having a collective awakening in some ways, like you're saying with this medial archetype of like being able to see that there's a way to synthesize things, that there's different natures to things. Our experience is multidimensional, and even if things can be held in a clash or in a paradox, that we can be able to hold that and be okay with it. Like you said, seeing in the dark. I love that.
Because that is what we're doing, right? And I love what you said about that being like primal nature. I
Mm-hmm.
think part of also what's so amazing about this archetype, um, and I think something that you'll really resonate with it, is that at its just on its kind of like it at its most basic, not basic, but like intrinsic core, is
Mm-hmm.
that it just helps us mediate how we receive symbols and images.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's only through dreaming, that is more than enough, because that is a pathway that can open up so many beautiful things for us, but also teach us about what we're actually experiencing and how we're kind of processing everything, and then backtracking to our primal natures and everything that we can interact with in that space. We're lucky actually that we can do these things.
We truly are. It's amazing. And it's funny because it doesn't matter how skeptical somebody is, we all love the stories. I think it's just part of being human is everybody you will meet will either have a story or know somebody close to them that has a story of connecting with someone who crossed over, or having a paranormal experience, or having a
Right.
prophetic dream, or the thing that happens often is like, say you dream of someone that you haven't seen in 20 years and then you see them within the next 2 weeks or
Right.
something. It seems to be something that is very universal to us. So no matter what people's kind of specific mental paradigm is, it seems like
Yeah.
it's something that speaks to our very soul as a species.
Exactly, right. And I feel like we have to acknowledge that
Yeah.
because if all, if so many people are going, I listened to a podcast the other day, um, which I'm not going to name, but the woman is this like prominent figure in her profession, and she was saying how she had had an experience
Mhm.
when she was younger of sitting on the bed, and she saw this person like walk through the room and then out the door. And her mother did the same, saw the same thing, and she was like, "Oh, it's just this figure that sometimes comes through here."
Mhm.
And I feel like we have to be able to look at those experiences and look at them in a way that helps us collectively.
Mhm.
So not to dismiss them, not to be in fear of them, not to prize them necessarily either, not to like idolize them and go, oh, okay, this is the like pinnacle, but to go, okay, well, if this is happening, we can't just go, oh well, it happened one time, it's I can't ever look at that again, because
Mhm.
that's where our consciousness is so much more vast than that.
Yeah.
And we have the ability to perceive in multiple ways. And we're seeing that so beautifully in some ways, I feel, with technology,
Yeah.
right? Just another thing we're mediating, like our consciousness with the advanced intelligence. And so I think one of the most amazing things that we can lean into is our power of adaptability.
Mhm.
Um, because we really then lean into like feeling like we are um more empowered, as
Yeah.
opposed to disempowered by these experiences.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So true. Um, so Athena, where can people can you just let us know where people can find you, where people can find your book? Again, I will have links and everything down below, but just let us know a little bit about what you have going on and where to find you.
Thank you so much. So people can find me at my website, www.athenalaz.com. And then my books are available online, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere you can think of, they should be there.
Amazing. And I have one more question because I always ask a question at the end. And so I was wondering, what is your take on aliens and where that fits into our consciousness and all of this sort of stuff? If you don't have a definitive answer, that's fine. It's just fun to talk about.
So I definitively don't have a set answer, but I will say this. I really believe and have personal experiences where through lucidity have met different forms of consciousness. And I
Mm.
feel that part of the alien, what we describe as alien, is that just part of a different consciousness. And I think we can project a lot of fear into that space. But that said, I've also heard very, very interesting stories about things. So I'm open-minded is where I'd put myself.
Amazing. I love that so much. I find it's so interesting. Um, I've seen talks and stuff where people are talking about that overlap of like angels or spiritual beings and aliens and all of this. And yes, I think we do. I think there's also been a large propaganda campaign to kind of make it seem weird or scary or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, it's so interesting how so many people have so many different experiences with that. And so
Yes.
I love it because I see it as really an arm of the consciousness phenomena.
Right.
And so it seems like it really fits with all of these realms. So thank you for that. So thank you everybody who is listening. Feel free to check out the links below in the description so you can find out where to get Women Who Dance in the Dark. Congratulations on your new book.
Thank you.
And to find where to connect with Athena. Thank you so much for being here. This was amazing to talk to you.
Likewise, thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Bye.